What's good? It's Russell King here. Today we're going to be discussing the recent episode of Monday Night Raw. It starts off with the Judgment Day promo with Damian Priest, JD McDonough, Finn Balor, and Dominic Mysterio. They're out there. Damian starts the promo off. He starts talking about Jey Uso, talked about how he's still the champ, talked about Backlash, talked about how everyone loved Jey Uso, how everyone's a fan of him, but that wasn't enough to get the job done at Backlash. Then he starts alluding to Judgment Day with Finn Balor, JD and Dominic Mysterio. Starts alluding to them interfering in matches. Finn ends up interrupting, ends up saying that he's sorry. Priest accepts his apology, but Priest ends up saying that's not what he's talking about. He wants to allude to what happened after the match. Then Damian ends up saying that he was sorry. He lost his temper. He got out of control, and he appreciates the help of them helping him in the match. So they all make up, they all end up hugging, had a good moment. Then they break the hug. Then Damian says, it's back to business, all rise, Judgment Day. They run Monday Night Raw, etc. Then Finn Balor gets on the mic. He's excited, he's hyped. He mentions how Drew McIntyre is ruled out due to an injury that we end up finding out. And he's basically excited. He's like, I get a first round bye, I get a free bye. I don't get to wrestle. But then Adam Pearce comes out and tells the unfortunate news to Finn that he's not getting a first round. He's not getting a bye. He's not getting a first round bye. He talks about how King of Ring is very important. And if you want to prove that you're the King of Ring, you have to wrestle every round. And he ends up saying his opponent is Jey Uso, which is that was the perfect opponent to put in place of Drew McIntyre. That was perfect. A good opponent is a good enough opponent where it's believable that Finn Balor can win, but it's also believable that Jey Uso can win as well, because you didn't just want to replace him with anybody. And Jey Uso is a main eventer. He is a threat, so this was a good replacement. And what they ended up doing in the match was great. Now we get to Jey Uso versus Finn Balor in the first round, the first match of the King and Queen of the Ring tournament. This was a solid match. It started off very slow pace at first, but it ended up picking up. Ended up getting back into commercial. They had a solid back and forth. Finn Balor ends up going for his coup de grace. Jey Uso ends up reversing it and ends up hitting him with a spear. Finn Balor, he goes for the pin. Finn Balor kicks out. Then we got after he kicks out, Jey Uso ends up after Finn Balor kicks out, Drew McIntyre comes out from the crowd, comes out in the ring, and he's furious. He's trying to cost Jey Uso the match. Jey Uso is staring at Drew McIntyre outside the ring. Finn Balor ends up doing a roll-up pin. Jey Uso kicks out. Finn Balor ends up doing a swing blade. And Finn Balor tries to do his signature, drop kick into the corner to set up his finisher. But he goes for the drop kick. Jey Uso ends up spearing him while he goes for his drop kick, and he ends up picking up the victory. Drew McIntyre is pissed. He's mad that Jey Uso won. He tried to cost Jey Uso the match, but it didn't work. He hurry-ups. He gets in the ring very slowly. Jey Uso ends up leaving the ring immediately. Jey Uso didn't want no problems. Drew McIntyre and Jey Uso start staring at each other, and Jey Uso starts taunting Drew McIntyre. He starts doing like his signature dance that the crowd does with him to Drew McIntyre. And Drew McIntyre is just staring at Jey Uso, just staring at him, very angry. I really love what they did. I love that they had Jey Uso as the replacement, because that was crazy, man. I really love what they did there. They still, doing the Drew McIntyre and Jey Uso rivalry. I love that. It's crazy that Drew McIntyre is really in a rivalry with two people right now, mainly with CM Punk, but he's still kind of in a rivalry with Jey Uso. I love that. Now we get to the next segment with Drew McIntyre and Adam Pearce. Drew McIntyre is talking to Adam, and he's frustrated. He's mad. He talks about how he was screwed and why would you give Jey Uso an opportunity in the King and Queen of the Ring tournament when I was the one that was screwed by CM Punk. He shouldn't even be in the match. Adam basically says that has nothing to do with Jey Uso. He talked about that. The reason you got pulled out was simply because you admitted that you had an injury and you're not medically clear. Drew is upset. He's not having it. And he ends up driving off in a very nice Corvette. That all black Corvette. That was very nice. Drives off, and it's showing him driving off. And it took like a good 5 seconds, because they were still showing him after he already drove off. But then another car pulls up, and it's CM Punk and this old school Mustang type of ride. It was a very good transition they did. CM Punk pulls up right after Drew McIntyre leaves, goes up to Adam Pearce, and the first thing he asks is literally, where's Drew McIntyre? Literally right after the leave. That was so perfect. Ends up saying, where's Drew McIntyre? Adam Pearce told him that he just left. Then CM Punk ends up telling Adam to tell, the producers to play his music. He has something to say, and Adam ends up agreeing. Now we get to the CM Punk promo. CM Punk said that he ended up driving to the arena to fight Drew McIntyre. But he said Drew McIntyre ended up leaving, and he ended up leaving, unfortunately. Then he starts talking about last week promo, how he wanted to, basically talk about Drew McIntyre in less time than his World Heavyweight Championship, right? But he ends up saying that this time he's going to do it for longer because he wants to give Drew McIntyre enough time to come back into the arena. That is, CM Punk is doing some great work. That is some savage stuff to be like, hey, I'm gonna be here until you come back because I really wanna, swear up. That I really love what CM Punk did there. Then he ends up telling the crowd that you guys need to take a picture and tweet at Drew McIntyre so he knows I'm in the arena so he could pull back. I really love that. I love what CM Punk did there. That was great. Then he starts talking about the Royal Rumble, the torn tricep, how Drew injured him, and he ends up saying that he thought that Drew McIntyre ruined his WrestleMania dream, but he ended up saying that he didn't ruin his dream, he just postponed it. Then he did a baseball analogy, ends up saying that he's a 5-tool player and Drew McIntyre is just a tool. I thought that was a clever line. Then he starts mentioning how Drew McIntyre always complaining about how at first it was about him not being, how CM Punk wasn't a locker room leader when he was younger. Then it became about how I strewed him out of his title. Now, like, constantly complaining, coming up with a new excuse to hate him. Then he ends up talking about how Drew McIntyre is starting to copy CM Punk, how he's starting to cut his promos like him, how he's starting to sit in the ring like him. Then he starts asking, do you truly hate me or do you hate yourself? This was a really good promo. This was a really good promo. This is going to be great. This is going to be great, man. This is going to be a really good rivalry when they're actually getting in the ring. I cannot wait till they actually are able to fight each other when they're both cleared from the injuries. I can't wait till they actually are able to put hands on each other because this is going to be great. And whenever they do feud, whenever they do have a match, I'm going to be honest, they need to make it no holds barred, no disqualification, whatever, because they need to be able to do whatever they want to each other, because this has been great. And the fact that they haven't even had like a real brawl or anything and they're able to do this is crazy. Now we get to the first match of the the first women's match of the King/Queen of the Ring tournament. Io Sky versus Natalya. This was actually a solid match. This actually impressed me. They had a decent back and forth. Go back to commercial. And it was a very interesting sequence where Io Sky ends up doing a roll-up pin, but Natalya ends up reversing the roll-up pin and ends up picking her up into a power bomb and ends up doing a power bomb to Io Sky. I thought that was very impressive. Then we get to the ending sequence where Natalya goes for a sharpshooter. Io Sky reverses it, ends up reversing it, and ends up pushing Natalya into the turnbuckle. Io Sky goes for her signature double knees, which sets up to her moonsault. Hits the moonsault. Io Sky ends up winning the match. Then we get a quick little promo from Damage Control. Dakota Kai ends up saying that she's going to replace Asuka due to Asuka being injured, and says that basically they're basically coming after all the people they used to have beef with. Becky Lynch, Jade Cargill, and Bianca Belair. They're coming for those titles. Now we get to Ilya Dragunov and Ricochet. We already knew this was going to be a banger of a match. This was an amazing match. A lot of great spots that happened. We had a spot where Ricochet ended up doing a backflip towards the outside. Dragunov ends up avoiding it and ends up doing a suplex to Ricochet on the outside. Then we had a crazy spot where Ricochet did a top rope hurricanrana. Then before it went to commercial, we had a sequence where Ricochet did like 3 suicide dives in a row. And then on the last one, he did his signature like backflip suicide dive. Then it cut to commercial. Then we had a very sick maneuver by Ricochet where he had Ricochet on his shoulder. He had Ilya on his shoulders. And then he ended up doing like a cartwheel, like suplex or something. And then he ends up doing a springboard moonsault after that, which was very sick. Then Ricochet, later on in the match, tries to do another springboard moonsault. Dragunov ends up seeing it, ends up punching him midair, does a razor's edge. Then he ends up doing an H-bomb right after, goes for the pin, Ricochet kicks out. Then Ilya tries to end it, tries to go for the torpedo. the torpedo mask out, but Ricochet ends up hitting a code breaker. Then, yeah, it goes for the code breaker. I think after that, Ricochet tries to go for a top rope move, but Ilya gets up. He ends up hitting a top rope suplex. Then he ends up doing the H bomb and picks up the victory. This was a great match. This was an amazing match. Really showcased Ilya Dragunov's dominance, shows what he could do in the ring, and I can't wait. And Ilya Dragunov and Jey Uso are going to be in the semifinals, and that's going to be an interesting match. I wonder how they're going to do that match because I think Ilya will go to the conference finals. I think there's no way he doesn't, but I wonder how they're going to have Jey Uso lose. Is it going to be interference or is he going to win cleaner? Very interesting in match, but very glad that Ilya got his victory, and that was a great match on the main roster. Now we get a little quick match between Zoe Starks and Ivy Nile. This wasn't a bad match at all. It was fine, but nothing too major. Zoe Stark ends up picking up the victory with the G360. She picks up the win and goes to the semifinals. Now, we get a quick comedy segment with Awesome Truth. Truth is talking to Adam Pearce, talk about their next championship opportunity, and then he starts alluding to they need to face the Yukon Huskies. The Miz comes in, the Miz is basically saying, trying to stop Truth from making basically bad deals, bad championship opportunities, trying to, basically trying to try to get Truth on the right direction. But then Truth talks about how he wants to face the Yukon Huskies, and he ends up thinking that the NCAA is actually a wrestling company. It's all confusion. Miz ends up, Awesome Truth ends up leaving. It was a great, funny segment, cool little segment there. Truth, hilarious. We're gonna see what ends up happening with them in the tag titles. But then after, they all leave, Braun Breaker pulls out to Adam Pearce, and he looks a little frustrated. He ends up saying, "Why am I not in the King of the Ring tournament?" Adam Pearce ends up saying that, "Come to my office and I'll explain why." Very interested to see what they do there. I'm very curious to see why he's not in it and what's the explanation they're going to give. And I'm very interested to see what they're going to do with Braun Breaker. Now we get a quick Judgment Day segment. Judgment Day segment. Damien is talking to Finn Balor. They talk about the loss, but they're all cool. They're all saying, it's just one loss. It's not a big deal. Dominic Mysterio and Carlito comes in. Carlito comes. He tries to be all friendly and stuff, but Damien's not having it. Damien mentions how he cost him the match at Backlash in Puerto Rico. Carlito tries to say it's the past, try to be all buddy-buddy, but he realized Damien is not going for it. He ends up being honest and ends up saying, "Look, I need help with LWO, and it seems like you guys need help too." He said, "You help me out, I help y'all out, and we see where that goes." Damien basically agreed, but he doesn't really like it, and it moves on. Now, I don't think Carlito should join Judgment Day. This should be a temporary thing, so I'm very interested to see how they do it, but I think this is also a way for, Dominic Mysterio and Rey Mysterio to finally feud again. So I'm very interested to see how this plays up, though. Now, we get to Chad Gable versus Bronson Reed. This was very good for what it was for the beginning. Now, I knew this match wasn't going to be long, mainly because this match was way too fast-paced. Way too fast-paced. Typically with these two, when they wrestle, typically it starts off slow and then build up. They was going at it from the beginning. So I was like, why is this so fast-paced? But realized why it was fast-paced because I knew something was going to happen. Chad Gable, Chad Gable ended up doing like a German suplex, it was a top rope suplex to Bronson Reed. Goes for the pin, but Sami Zayn ends up interfering in the match, attacks Chad Gable. He's attacking him, giving him constant punches. Then he ends up attacking Bronson Reed. Then he ends up tossing Bronson Reed over the top rope. Then Chad Gable comes from behind when Sammy was distracted, ends up giving him a German suplex. Chad Gable gets him towards turns close to the turnbuckle. Sami Zayn ends up reversing one of his moves, ends up hitting the exploder, setting up the Helluva Kick. But as he goes for the Helluva Kick, Bronson Reed comes back in the ring and ends up body slamming Sami Zayn. Then he body slams Chad Gable, and he stands tall once again. Leaves the ring. And they're following him. They're following him towards the backstage, and then he talks to Adam Pearce. Adam Pearce is basically frustrated. He was like, "Why?" He's like, "Why can't you guys just basically conduct yourselves? Why can't you guys just wait? Why can't you guys not constantly interrupt? Why can't you just not put your hands on each other?" Bronson Reed basically ends up saying that he doesn't care. He doesn't care about Chad Gable. He doesn't care about Sammy. The only thing he cares about is that Intercontinental Championship. And he says that if you want things to be peaceful and you want to solve this issue, you know what to do. Now, of course, alluding to a possible triple threat match. Now we get a promo segment with Becky Lynch and Michael Cole. This was kind of dragging. It was kind of dragging for a bit, but Michael Cole talks about future opponents that Becky Lynch could face as champion. Becky Lynch ends up mentioning some women, some interesting women though. She mentions Alba Fire and Isla Dawn, mentions Kiana James, then she mentions Lyra Valkyria. Michael Cole ends up mentioning Lyra and Becky's history about them in NXT. Becky Lynch basically gave praise to Lyra Valkyria, and Michael Cole then alludes to WrestleMania 40, her match with Rhea Ripley. Talked about how she was sick, but Becky Lynch ends up saying that she's not sick anymore, and talked about that's not an excuse. The better woman just won. Then, she was about to allude to her wanting to defend her title, but Liv Morgan ends up interrupting the promo, comes out, and she ends up saying that she's tired of being overlooked. She's tired of being overshadowed. And she talked about how it's ridiculous the amount of disrespect she gets. She starts naming off her accomplishments: Money in the Bank, former champion, multiple tag team champion. Talked about how she beat Nia Jax and how she took out Rhea Ripley. Then she ends up saying that, talking to Becky Lynch, ends up saying that the fact that I can't get an ounce of respect from you is ridiculous. And she ends up saying that I want to talk about my championship opportunity that you promised me last week. Becky Lynch ends up saying that if you would have let me finish, I would have alluded to you. And she ends up saying that you got your championship match in 3 weeks at the King and Queen of the Ring pay-per-view. And she ends up saying, Becky Lynch ends up alluding to all of her accomplishments, ends up saying those are all great things that you have done, but there's one thing that you haven't done, which is beaten me. And then Liv Morgan ends up saying that actually hurt Liv, because Liv Morgan's face kind of changed after Becky Lynch ends up saying that. But Liv Morgan ends up saying that you're right, I never beaten you, but I finally realized what was missing, which is purpose, and I finally found my purpose, which is taking everything away from Rhea Ripley. And with me finally having purpose, I finally have what I need to beat you. Then Dakota Kai comes out. She comes out with Io Sky, and Kairi Sane ends up saying that Liv Morgan finally got a championship opportunity that she did nothing to earn. And she ends up then Kairi Sane, Io Sky, and Dakota Kai surround the ring, and she ends up saying that we are here to remind you guys who runs Monday Night Raw. Liv Morgan and Becky Lynch are kind of cornered, but it was one side of the ring that didn't have a member because Asuka's not there, so they can only cover three sides of the ring. Liv Morgan and Becky Lynch are faced back to back, but Liv Morgan ends up leaving the ring, setting Becky Lynch to fend for herself. Becky Lynch ends up getting jumped by Damage Control, but then Lyra Valkyria comes out for the save. Really love that. I love that Lyra Valkyria and Becky Lynch are still, telling their story of them being friends. The mentor versus the mentor and the student relationship. How Lyra looked up to Becky Lynch. I really love that they're still playing that story, because I was like, that is a story you need to tell when Lyra gets to the main roster. And then after that, we get a quick segment with Sami Zayn. I think he gets interviewed by Kathy Kelly, if I'm not mistaken. Talked about, Bronson Reed and Chad Gable. And talks about how the situation between those two should have been over. It should be over. He shouldn't be dealing with them. And he says that the only way he knows how to deal with them is basically fighting. And he says the only way we can settle this is in a triple threat match. He wants a triple threat match, and it looks like we're going to get that triple threat match at the King and Queen of the Ring pay-per-view. Now, we get Lyra Valkyria versus Dakota Kai, the first round of the Queen of the Ring tournament. Lyra Valkyria ends up picking up the victory. Nothing too major happened in the match, but Lyra Valkyria had to win. No other way. Now, we get to the main event of the show. Gunther versus Sheamus. This match was a banger. Like all their matches have been. This was great. This was a really good back and forth match. We had chops, hard-hitting maneuvers. Two of the most stiffest wrestlers in the company. This was great. Then we had a sequence where Gunther tries to do it looked like Gunther was trying to do a power driver on the ring apron, but Sheamus reverses it, ends up doing a back body drop on the ring apron. Then it cuts to commercial. Then it cuts back to commercial, and then we saw Gunther ends up doing a nasty chop to the back of Sheamus' shoulder. And then later on, it ended up showing like Gunther's fingerprints on Sheamus' back, which was crazy. Sheamus ends up doing his 10 beats. He was able to get to 17. Then we got a sequence where Sheamus ends up going for the bro kick, but he ends up missing, and his leg get caught in the ropes. Legs get caught in the ropes. The referee's distracted. Ludwig Kaiser ends up attacking the leg, ends up injuring Sheamus' leg, and they end up playing that into the match. Cuts back to commercial. Gunther is dominated. He's attacking the leg. Then we get a sequence where Gunther was on the top rope, but Sheamus was end up able to attack, and he ends up putting Gunther into a razor's edge. Yeah, he ends up putting him in a razor's edge, but Gunther ends up reversing it, but then Sheamus ends up countering it with a bro kick. Then he tries to go for the bro kick again, but the knee ends up giving out. Gunther ends up, taking advantage, ends up doing a power bomb. He goes for the pin, but he didn't let the ref count to 3. He counted like 2.5. Gunther ends up stopping the pin, ends up putting him into a Boston Crab, working the leg. Sheamus finds a way to get out of it, finds a way, ends up doing another razor's edge. Then he ends up doing back-to-back bro kicks. But he takes way too long to get the pin. He can't get the pin because he's exhausted. His knee is banged up. He can't get the pin. It took him like 15 seconds to get the pin. Goes for it. Gunther kicks out at like 2.5. Gunther kicks out, goes for the Boston Crab. Sheamus tries to fight. Sheamus tries his best to fight, but he just couldn't do it this time. His knee was just too banged up, and Sheamus tapped out. Sheamus ends up tapping out, and Gunther advances. That was a great match. That was a great way to end it. I was very shocked that they didn't do Shayna Baszler versus Selena Vega, because that was supposed to happen, but that's going to happen next week, which I'm not mad at. But this was great. This was a great Monday Night Raw. I'm very excited for the King of the Ring tournament, and I'm going to be honest here. I think Lyra Valkyria is going to go to the finals. I think it's too soon to do the Damage Control storyline. I think Lyra is going to go to the finals. And I think on the men's side, it's Gunther or Ilya. It's simple. Gunther or Ilya are winning. I think it's going to be Gunther, but because I think it's a little too soon for Ilya, but I think it's going to be Gunther. But this was a great show. But you guys let me know what you thought. Let me know who you have coming out of the King and Queen of the Ring tournament. Let me know what you guys thought of tonight's show. I thought it was great. But yeah, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. But yeah, that's it.